Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of ElevateNonprofit.com, an online learning platform for fundraising event professionals. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator. We are here with the Peter Drury, our special guest today. We have been talking about having this conversation for quite some time, so I'm very excited to be able to talk about building a development team. Peter is quite the expert in the space of strategy, team structure, nonprofit organization. So Peter, welcome to the Fundraising Elevator. We're glad you're here with us today.
Thank you. Thrilled to be here. I'm such an admirer of both of you and everything you do. Happy to be here.
Well, Kristen, let's introduce Peter to the audience.
Let's do it. Peter Drury brings wisdom and expertise to strategic counsel with executive directors and boards of directors. Following a career culminating as chief strategy officer, Peter now works to serve nonprofit organizations in a supporting cast role on a fractional basis. And what folks also need to know is that Peter is just the kindest, the most brilliant human who helps create solutions. And I think in this sector, we're really good at naming issues, problems, maybe seeing them as opportunities, maybe. And what I have always experienced about Peter is a really brilliant reframing about what the strengths in the room are and what the actual opportunities can be. So, Peter, thank you for all you do for this sector and to hold people up in it. Before we dive into team development, tell us about your role as a fractional chief strategy officer and what that is for folks whose ears perked up and don't know why.
Thanks. I appreciate that. And I'm happy to. You know, what's funny is both the word fractional and chief strategy officer are a little lingo-y, right? So I feel like I should unpack both of them. Fractional is a word that you kind of hear increasingly that I think is just like a sophisticated word for part-time, right? But it came up among CFOs, chief financial officers, kind of a fractional CFO. A lot of folks in nonprofits, and this even happens in the for-profit sector too, is they want a CFO, but on a 25% basis or something, you know, because they don't need a full-time CFO for their company or for their nonprofit. So the word fractional has kind of grown up over time for like, well, you might want someone in a role, but can you engage them, like as a quarter time, half time, 10% time, so that you have kind of the guidance or the benefit of some experience, maybe in wisdom, but you don't need that person full-time on your team. So that's kind of what fractional is as an idea. And I played with it in the role of chief strategy officer. That's a role I was really honored to be able to serve in for the last 5 years of my career. And I've been a director of strategy and other things in recent years. And so I tend to say to people that my job as a chief strategy officer was to always be focused on the future and on alignment, future and alignment. So it's like, where is an organization trying to be 3 years from now, as opposed to, oh crap, what's the fire we have to put out today? But to put out the fire today in a way that helps us, I like this idea of being like forward compatible. Like, let's solve a problem today in the short term that's compatible with the future we're aiming for. And so strategy is kind of like a chess match, or you play pickleball or tennis or soccer. Like, you know, strategy is like seeing some things in advance and watching some pieces fit in together so you can get to that place. And so what I've done is I went out on my own at the beginning of this year, decided I'd like to really kind of end my career, if that's what's ahead for me, as doing the thing that I love the most, that I think I'm the best at, and that people seem to ask me for, which is to be a conversation partner on strategy. And so I thought, you know, rather than being full-time in one place, which is what I've been doing, what if I could engage nonprofit, typically boards and executive directors, somebody who feels like an ED feels pretty lonely, you know, in leadership, or they're like, oh, how do I talk to my board about this without admitting that I don't know something, you know, or how do I navigate this, you know, particular, you know, I don't want, you know, or need some confidential conversation about yada, yada. So I think it was kind of chief counsel, chief strategy, like your conversation partner in strategy. And I know I'm giving you a long answer, but I'll give you one more piece I'm finding really gratifying and I'm really enjoying, is there are executive directors increasingly in organizations who feel kind of thrust into that role. And I think that happens disproportionately to leaders of color, BIPOC folks, who people have suddenly said, oh, let's thrust them in this role because we look better as an organization. And that person could just get set up to get creamed in that role, right? And then it just can augment all kinds of other unequitable, disequitable, inequitable problems. So I found myself pretty quickly to become a resource to EDs who've been thrust into some roles and say, wow, I just need a conversation partner to help me kind of form some stuff in my first year as executive director. That kind of, I love that. I mean, to me, that's a fabulous to serve as a number two and to be kind of quiet behind the scenes and help people in that position. And the last part I'll say to that, as a person who's white, for those on your podcast who are or aren't, seeing things, hey, I'm a white guy, and a lot of folks thrust into those roles are serving on predominantly white boards.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my God, how do I navigate this conversation in a way, because it's either, whatever you can imagine, it's just fraught with complexity. So I like to be helpful with navigating the world of white folks who are trying to be inclusive but are pretty bad at it, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm just so chief strategy officer can range from kind of finance to culture to org development, all that kind of stuff. So yeah,
well,
there you go.
You touch on a couple of things that you and I have talked a lot about that I keep coming up against in the sector as well, which is executive director leadership is often very lonely. And we so frequently hear from executive directors that they're kind of sandwiched between their team and their board without like a peer support system around them. So I love that you're in that support role. And the thing that you and I have talked about so often is when we have a new executive director coming into leadership who hasn't been in the nonprofit sector, oftentimes they're coming from an aligned career, but don't necessarily know how to navigate that board space, navigate team building space. And you've just been such a wealth of knowledge and resource and support that I'm excited to hear that there are resources now in the community, like a chief strategy officer, a fractional chief strategy officer, to be that sort of support, that wraparound, all of the resources that I think our executive directors sometimes need and just don't have when they don't have like a deputy director position on their team.
Well, and also I think there are folks who come from sort of an aligned space into being an executive director in an organization. But I also think there's this whole crew of folks who are thrust into ED roles based on tenure in the organization, who may never have envisioned that, achieved any sort of companionship or training in that regard.
Yeah.
And that too feels like a pratfall for failure.
Yeah.
That we want people in that role. We're like, oh, you've been here forever. You know everything.
Right.
Just do it. And we don't provide them anything to be successful with.
Yeah.
And that, I feel like, is a really welcome space for companionship, for sure.
Well, I think one of the gaps that we see so often when our executive directors are experiencing a new role or have come from the program side sometimes and are moving into executive director leadership is the fact that a nonprofit is a unique little entity and that you have to have fundraising supporting your work.
Yeah.
And so, I think hiring a development team is a key critical role, and having the right development team. But so that we can open this conversation to maybe a new leader in the sector, Peter, how would you define the role of a development team? What do you think a development team sort of does so that we can frame for our executive directors what they're hiring for?
Nice. Gosh, so many thoughts on what you both just said a moment ago, and I'll refrain myself from bouncing off those. Lots of great ideas.
No,
right there.
bounce away.
Bounce away.
No, but I want to go. So development, that word development, I think, came up because it used to be that we'd say fundraising. And by used to be, I mean, kind of before the three of us were even, this goes way back when we were kids or something, right? There were some adults in a generation well before us who were like, well, let's not call it fundraising, let's call it development.
Right.
But I think they had the right idea, which was we're developing relationships, we're developing goodwill, we're developing community. Like there's a lot of good stuff to be developed. And I think it's great that the title isn't, director of fundraising. I think that, fundraising is why people are hired. It's what executives are hired. Oh, crud, I need to raise some money, right? So it's the reason why. And I never lose sight of that. That's important at the end of the day. But the activities of fundraising and what we've learned in that past generation or two, again, both preceding our time and then for the three of us kind of in our era professionally, we've all learned is that there's activities you do that aren't literally fundraising, right? That are cultivating relationships and building brands and telling stories and welcoming people in and offering hospitality and building excitement. You need people who do those things, right? And then the symptom of that can become the raising of funds. And you two are so masterful of that, I think, particularly in terms of events and experiences. That's such a critical piece of it. And you two are so masterful in that. I think it's folks who can create events and experiences and relationships and that wind up raising money over time. But what I see is a lot of executive directors think, oh, I need somebody who can ask for money. Well, sometimes that's the last thing you need to do.
Right.
And so that's what I would say. And I want to embrace that word development. I think we've kind of danced around it over the years, and other words like advancement and come up, and they're all fine. But development, there's a lot of stuff we need to develop. So let's get clear about what that stuff is that will ultimately lead to raising money. Yeah.
How do you, to kind of riff on that, thinking about fundraising being a symptom of developing all these other things, how would you direct somebody looking at adding to their development team or building one in the first place, probably more aptly? What are the traits in somebody that you should be looking for to develop relationships? I think we're encountering, a development sector that's at a real inflection point. There are a lot of folks leaving the sector. We've got a lot of new folks entering the sector. As you know, you've been in a formal education program in this space, but there aren't a ton of those. They're few and far between. So how can people start to think about what traits they're looking for in people who are holding relationships? Because I think it's either the fundraiser on paper who's like, I raised $2.6 million for blah, 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 which to your point doesn't really tell me anything about you.
Yeah.
Except that you maybe can close, but it doesn't tell me what that process is like for you. And then you have other folks who see that they have to raise $2.6 million and cry and don't know, have no tools and don't know how to approach that path. But if we think about it in terms of, let's start with relationships, what traits are helpful in that regard that you look to foster?
That's excellent, Kristen. And I think that I'll just comment too that on that one about your $2.6 million example. Also, the person who says I've raised $2.6 million, sometimes it tells me the wrong thing. Sometimes they're taking credit for somebody else's work.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I raised $2.6 million. And if that person were being fully honest, it would be like, no, I participated in a team that did all these things, and together we raised $2.6 million. So there's, so even that person, I get nervous about the traits. I think, So I have 4 words in my mind when I think about a culture of philanthropy, and let me start with those 4. There are other traits, but I think that as we build a culture of philanthropy, when an organization builds a way of kind of living and breathing and behaving to cultivate philanthropy, there are 4 words that always come to mind for me, and the first of those is gratitude. Someone who's good with gratitude, and by good with gratitude, I mean they actually notice when someone does something and take the time to say thank you, and thank you really well. That's an art form all by itself. I'd take gratitude people all day long, and I think gratitude's at the heart of it. The next one's hospitality. You know how you feel the difference between if you come into a restaurant or into someone's home or a hotel and you feel welcome, you feel warm and fuzzy. There's signs that help you feel included. I even think about, our shift in consciousness about pronouns in recent years, and just the role of indicating, pronouns is an act of hospitality, right? Yeah. So like what are actions and behaviors that include or help someone say, hey, it's safe here, or you're welcome here, you could be involved here, and not have to spend their time worrying, is it safe, here. So gratitude is first, hospitality is second, third is integrity. So integrity for me is the thing that I say in alignment with the thing that I do? Is the thing that I believe in alignment with the thing that I do? Do I speak honestly? Because all these things around transparency, metrics, performance, honesty, those things are critical. I can be a gratitude person. I can be a warmly welcoming person, but my integrity kind of jumps it up a level, right? Like think about when you've heard a speaker speak on a topic that you're like, oh my God, and they're just truly on it. Like I think about hearing Brian Stevenson, if you're familiar with him, and the museum that was opened in Mobile, Alabama to slavery. You hear someone like Brian speak about what went into the creation of that museum, and just speaking kind of both truth to power and truth to naive history, and just he remarkable clarity about that. And you hear someone speak, that, to me, that's the integrity. Does it hold together the depth of commitment, passion, delivering, making a difference, whatever? That's a key one in development, I think. Helping a prospective donor believe that they can make a difference in the world. Like that's all around integrity. And then the final one is community. So gratitude, hospitality, integrity, and community is, can we build a sense of community so that, like, if you just picture it like with one donor, if I as a donor feel like you're grateful for my participation in organization, and I also feel welcomed in hospitality, if I feel the depth of your integrity and conviction and transparency, and then I feel like, wow, I'm part of a community. Like, I love these people. The other donors are people I want to be around because we all believe and work on the same thing. If I can move through those 4 steps toward community, that's brilliance to me in a development team. Now, that's not how it's usually framed up, not usually written in a job description, but I think about kind of just that arc. There's certainly, I could probably add 4, 5, 6, 7 other words to that. But I think a team and a leader who can build that trajectory for folks is really at the core. And then think about the opposite. Think about the problems we wind up with in development teams and nonprofits. If someone doesn't build community, or or they don't have a sense of hospitality, right? You do feel kind of excluded, or you're not quite sure if they're fully honest or making a difference. Like, just think about the flip of each one of those, right? They're not all that grateful. Guess what? That stuff works directly against fundraising. So it's more like, really do think about those 4 traits. There are others, but I really start there.
I think that's so great. I think I like your idea of the flip, and every one of those, when I flip them, it doesn't matter to me what the organization's mission is and how in alignment with my personal mission it is. Any one of those working against me, I'm out.
Yeah. It's the best development professionals that we've worked with and that we know exemplify all of those things. But I think of the community in particular, we had Juan Martinez on the show. He's a development professional, one of the best. And his relationship to his donors is truly a friendship. Like, he has truly cultivated and curated a community around him that are also his friends. And I think that that is the mark of someone who really is just invested in building a community that sees each other and hears each other. And I think that those 4 are very key elements to a development team's success. I'm curious if you dive a little further into those. Some of our organizations have a team of 1. And all 4 of those words are things I could think of with a team of 1.
Totally.
But some actually have more robust teams that they can build out, teams of 3, teams of 5 in development. So I'm curious a little bit about, are you looking for those 4 traits in all roles? Are you looking for those in leadership roles, or are you looking for them to be disseminated around the team?
Fabulous question. I'm thinking about it mostly for the team as a whole. That's really well-rounded in that sense, because I really never know if we're talking about a team of 1, 3, 5, or 75. I mean, it kind of depends on where you are. I think a development team that can't do those things, or to Kristen's point, does the opposite of them, immediately alienates. So I think certainly the development team as a whole needs to do those 4. In general, as I'm hiring, I want to make sure I understand, if what I need is a prospect researcher, let's just say, or a grant writer, I might, or a data, someone in DevOps and data. I'm willing to give on some of those a bit, because they're helping support the people who are front with gratitude, front with hospitality, So if you get a larger team, I think it's really about the wholeness of it. But so many nonprofits have 1 or 2 or 3 people in development. And I think that team needs to have it also just for their own work relationship too, for their own health and happiness.
Yeah. It's, I think, a conundrum sometimes when we're looking at the different roles and responsibilities to come up against all of those roles fitting into one person. And so many organizations have, different budget sizes that then can accommodate different staffing needs. I just was having conversation with a development professional that's moving into her final position that she plans to retire from. And she said it was really important to her moving into this final job that she plans to be in for the last decade of her career, that she be in a position that doesn't have the requirement that you wear all hats, that isn't the one person team. She's like, I want to be on a team. I want to lead a team.
Yes.
It's really valuable to know that not everyone has to have every skill set. But when I think of as the leader of that team, I think all 4 of those traits will come with the team if the leader demonstrates them first and foremost.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And when you get to the leadership part of that, especially maybe for some larger teams, that's where these things like vulnerability. I love that there's been more press on like vulnerability as strength in leadership, for example. And the role of a leader is to build more leaders, not to build followers, And so, and I think that, I think if your leader of the larger organization embodies those 4, it's going to help shape that in the whole team for sure. Yeah.
It's interesting, your comment about the need for integrity. I think when I think of the flip of that, I have seen the damage that can do when it's flipped. But I was recently reading in a Seth Godin book about leadership that with over 300 plus emotions that we can feel, that we can communicate, that we can connect with, the one that impacts people the most, the one emotion that engages people, that moves people to change their mind, to create beliefs, is authenticity. And I think authenticity and integrity go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a really important role. Well, you and I were talking a little bit about sports metaphors and building teams from a sports metaphor. That idea that team structures, whether it's one or multiple team members, oftentimes rely not just on the hard skills, but also the soft skills. Can you tell me a little bit about when you are looking at the whole for an organization and making strategic recommendations for that organization, what are the things that you are looking at when they're starting to develop a plan for their hiring for the year? Are you looking mostly to try to align with those 4 particular, I would call those sort of soft skills, or are you looking for sort of specific hard skill sets when you're making recommendations about hiring practices?
Yeah, lots there. So I would say that I'm probably starting with this language of hard skills and soft skills. I wish we had different language for that personally, but I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that language because I think it's known. I wish we had other stuff for that. I think I'm looking for technical skills, but then I answered as I did when Kristen asked that because of traits. And to me, that's a bit of the supporting cast of the technical skills, right? So for example, I might need someone who's excellent with data or an excellent writer for grant writer, or I might need someone who's a fabulous event planner. And I could get the technical skills, but then to Kristen's point, if they don't have those 4 traits, if there's someone who makes me feel uncomfortable for not being inclusive, or if they make me distrust them for not having, then it tosses all the skills out the window. But hang on, I wish I did some not answer. I've had a doorbell. I've had a phone ring the side.
This is what real life looks like, Peter.
This is real life.
Right? Had a dog barking and I went on mute. It's just real life. So, so I guess I'm in that zone where I would still hire for skills. And you mentioned sports, and I'll clarify. I'm bad at sports. So I like sports and the arts for ensemble metaphors, but I'm no good at them. So I'm not speaking as an athlete. But if you're putting together a soccer team, you need some people who can kick the ball or can stop the ball from getting the goal. I mean, there's some technical skills you need, but there's also the teamwork skills that help people trust each other, and I might not start getting people on the soccer team because I'm looking for someone who builds trust, because I could get someone who builds trust who cannot kick a ball, right? So I think those things exist in relationship, but having technical skills, and I think so many of us know this from our lived experience, that you can have someone who's smart or capable in a certain way, but if they alienate or undermine or, it just makes it just flies in the face of what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
So I think it's both. There are fundamental skills, absolutely. I'll give you an example. I was on behalf of a CEO of a nonprofit I'm helping right now on a particular project. They've never, ever, ever done prospect research. They didn't even really know it existed other than I think I could Google some people who I know, and the CEO of this organization happens to have a very, very strong network, very much worthy of some prospect research. So to find the person who has the technical skill in prospect research, but also, there's so much ethical, there's so many ethical issues around prospect research, for example, right?
Yeah.
There's just some kind of there's just nuance about doing this the right way and doing this in some bad way, whatever else. So for me, the really artful prospect researcher who could develop a relationship with the CEO, get to know kind of their network and what they're trying to do and they don't want to be schmarmy, but they want to be smart, these are, so a great prospect researcher has to have the technical skills and also, great kind of relational and ethical integrity kinds of foundations. So those things go together.
So we're going to take a short pause to hear from some of our supporters. But when we come back, I want to dive a little bit into the impact that the executive director has in influencing who you're hiring in development and sort of the leadership skills that exist there and how development can support around those. So we'll be right back with Peter Drury talking about building a development team.
Elevate, we believe in bringing people together. Our online learning platform for fundraising events has webinars, workshops, downloadable tools, and more designed to save you time and stress when planning your next event. We're getting nonprofit, development, and event planning professionals the tools and ideas they need to create events that inspire donors and raise more money. So join us at elevatenonprofit.com. The link is also in our show notes.
Welcome back to the Fundraising Elevator. We are here with the always amazing Peter Drury, and we are talking about building teams and what that can look like. We were talking before the break. We were using some sportsy stuff. And I want to kick a question over to you about ensemble, Peter. And when I think about, if I want to extend the sports metaphor, which we know I'm always prone to do, to me, when I look at stats, let's say specifically soccer, of the goal scorers.
Yes.
I'm also looking at their assist stats because to me, if they are only scoring goals and that assist isn't almost an equivalent number, we're missing the point.
Right.
Right.
They're
and
not
so,
a team player.
To go into NCAA, Caitlin Clark set the record on points, but also assists.
Right.
So it's about what does that combination look like? So when you get an amazing ensemble, there's an eloquence to it. There is a passing, just like, I don't even have to look. I know you're there. I've sent you the ball, and I know what you're going to do with it. Groups that move together without thinking. What's necessary for a team to work that way?
Oh, I love that. I love, Kristen, you set me up. We did not pre-plan this, I'll tell your audience, but I almost a moment ago raised something around assist. I'm going to tell you that's very influential from my childhood and affects my sense of leadership. And it's definitely right on mark with what you just said. So when I was a kid playing soccer, as a second grader, third grader, fourth grader, and I had no business particularly playing soccer, but, and if you had in those days, because I'm old, we didn't have these, but if you had drone photography, in the 1970s, and you could have looked down on a group of second graders playing soccer, right? It's like this hive of bees, this, just following the ball all over. And my coach in the second or third grade said at the beginning of the season, two things that have stuck with me for my life. And the first one was, said, look, when we play soccer this year, and it was a comment kind of at the beginning of the season and it got reiterated all the time through the season, I'm going to keep score. And, if you get a goal in a game, that's 1 point. And if you have an assist in a game, that's 2 points.
Excellent.
And I don't just keep score for a game, I keep score for the season.
Yep.
So both those things are important, right?
Yep.
Over the course of the season, in general, you get more points by being good at assists, which I think the soccer coach knew full well. I mean, whether you got the assist or not, if ultimately the person you passed to got the goal in or not was less the point, as creating a culture where looking for someone else's opportunity
Yes.
was more valuable than just seizing your own.
Yep.
And I don't know if any other of my second grade, teammates still remember that one. But I've been so struck with that in my life that if I can create in a culture and a context as a leader where the assist is understood to be more valuable, certainly equally valuable, but erring toward more, and you keep score over a season, not a game, right? So that's also in fundraising. I think we never want to have like short-term wins on something quick. Like I asked someone for a $10,000 gift really, really quickly, when as a larger team, we could have gotten them to $1 million gift, over a period of time for something huge. But if I asked, I like to say that the faster we raise money, the less of it we raise. The faster we try to raise it, the less we raise.
Yeah.
And so if we seize too many opportunities to score, to get that ball in the goal, without having the perspective of the larger assist, I think we can ultimately bring down the fundraising, team and results. Yeah. So I love, Kristen, that you went with the assist. It's beautiful because that shapes me a lot. And I've been with lots of development teams. I know you two have too, where you get in this stuff about who gets credit for which gift, because some supervisor somewhere who doesn't truly understand the fundraising process, they want to be good. I want to manage my fundraising team. So, okay, who gets credit for what? Well, getting credit actually makes the teams less effective, more competitive, brings down morale, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I could give you so many examples of that. But when you take the team that has one goal together.
Yes.
And you find some ways to celebrate the stuff that isn't necessarily, they closed a $10,000 gift, but instead, this happened with this donor and these 3 people were all involved, and you thank them publicly. That's a way better way to grow that team. So I'm with you on assists by a long shot. I think that asking and closing gifts is at most 10% of the fundraising process, maybe 5%. I think at least 90, maybe 95% of the fundraising process is this cultivation of relationship, of trust, of integrity, of friendship, community, all these things we were just talking about. So if I'm just only counting the closers, I'm creating the wrong culture.
Right.
I love that. There's so
but
many.
It's also consistent, right?
Yeah.
And I think the evaluation of the I made the ask and I got the close, like that belies that there is work to be done all the time toward that. And I think we're in a culture of like, how do I get this done? How do I get, what's the thing that I do to get it done? And the art form of development is the long burn.
Yeah.
It is. Can I say one more? Sorry, I can tell, Sam, you probably want to ask me a different question. Can I say one more thing on this?
Yeah.
So, because in the segue to the break, you were talking about kind of how I want to parlay this a little bit to like the executive director's style in this. So I've come to believe, and I think you two have probably heard me say this in other contexts, but I've come to believe that the most powerful force in fundraising, unfortunately, I don't mean it's a good force, the most powerful force in fundraising, I believe, is anxiety.
Yeah.
And what people are scared of or anxious about drives their behavior of their fundraising team. So if an executive director is anxious with social relationships, like they're not comfortable building community, they're going to really drive hard on corporate sponsorships and grant writing and government relations, for example. And they're probably not going to value a culture of philanthropy that grows relationships and puts them in a position to need to have, quality relationships with their donors. If an executive director or development director is anxious, like they're just not a good writer and they're scared to be seen writing, and they just know that, right? Their anxiety about that might undermine their ability to create the foundation relationships that they need to do, whatever. So, and I could go lots of ways with this, but I just say anxiety is a powerful, powerful driver. Yeah. It's the most powerful driver in the boardroom, I believe, is what boards are scared of more so than what they actually believe.
Yeah.
And so we have to look at how fundraising culture and fundraising leadership can do this flip of like, we're doing things that someone said, they think that they're smart. Like, oh, it would be very smart for us to do this, this, and this. But what's smart is that what they're characterizing as smart is actually protective, not smart, around the thing they're anxious about. Yeah. So if the executive director, I'm scared the board will get mad at me if I can't measure my fundraising team. Okay, so now I have to measure my fundraising team. And so now what are the metrics? And then they create metrics that have to do with regulating anxiety. with their board, not metrics about how do I grow an effective fundraising practice. So that's, to me, this is the biggie. This is at the heart of all of this. And then in the nonprofit sector, because it is so hard to raise money, let's be honest, it's really, really hard. It's really hard to raise money. It doesn't have to be, right? But it is. And when people, the new person is hired, you commented earlier about newer people coming in the field and people leaving the field. A lot of it's because it is difficult. I think it's difficult because leaders have made it difficult.
Yeah.
I don't think that gratitude is difficult, or hospitality is difficult, or integrity is difficult, or community is like, those are lovely, wonderful things that actually are enjoyable to do. And especially professionally, like, wow, I get paid to do these things. But they get so fraught with the leader's anxiety or the board's, whatever. So that's thing one. I'm going to couple one other idea with that, which is, if the three of us were going to build a business, let's say that we were going to create some new clean tech company with some kind of, some clever way of getting clean energy. We would ask people on our board of directors who were experts in clean tech and who were engineers and who understood science. We would not hire at-large people who just volunteered from the community in general and made them feel like they were the most brilliant people ever and they could be in charge. We would not do that with a for-profit. So in a nonprofit organization, there's a really great reason why we recruit board members from a diversity of professions and lived experience, right? But we put them in a position where they can feel like they are experts on something, right? Rather than like what is governance really, right? Like being on a board, I don't know if it means you're the expert of everything. Kind of wild to get leaders onto a nonprofit, get leaders into nonprofit leadership of either executive director, development director, that kind of role. And then answer to a group of people who have opinions about fundraising because they went to a gala once and they presumed from the gala because they saw the banner for a corporation, they thought, oh, we have to go to that corporation. What they don't know is the corporation, was paying for the marketing bang, not for the long-term philanthropy lift. And so, so we wind up getting opinions of people who aren't actually the content expert. So anyway, in most enterprises, you wouldn't attract a board. So like that. And now I'm not critiquing nonprofit boards. What I'm saying is, let's be clear about what the role of a nonprofit board is. And that is to give us representative input, diverse perspectives, help us bounce ideas. They're governing, do we have effective and honest and ethical practices? But if you use like the board source model of board governance, and sorry, I'm going way down the road here. I should catch myself. Sorry, I'm going way too long. But when the board is in session, they're a bit of a brain trust for leaders, right? They can help consider diverse perspectives, reflect on things. But when they disperse from session, they're in the supporting cast of the leadership. The leadership does not have 12 different bosses. The leadership has one boss, the board in session together. When they're not in session, those folks are supposed to be in the supporting cast and allowing the leaders to lead. So I do feel like I'm tying all this together, the thing about the assists and getting 2 points, right? And I'm also tying together, Sam, where you were going with an executive director's kind of leadership personality profile and style. Is I think we need to have a culture that values the assist more than the goal, right? Where we're counting and measuring good things. We're sensitive to, are we planning based on the opposite of our anxiety, or are we planning based on what would actually be effective? And then finally, does the board truly understand its role? Because if it doesn't, anxiety just sends people off into a zillion different directions, right? So I think there's a very complex issue there, but it's also very simple. To really focus on leadership and how it creates the conditions for effective fundraising.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a lot.
No, it's fantastic.
What I really appreciate is thinking about anxiety driving metrics.
Right.
Which on the receiving end of those metrics, that's when my whole world feels like limitation, not liberation.
Right. I'm curious about how you coach people to sort of address those anxieties.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I did. There's so many thoughts about that. The one is, golly. So let me just kind of use a story of something that probably a lot of people don't can relate to. I call it the CEO freak. So it's when the CEO freaks out over, oh my God, we're at the middle of the fiscal year and we're way behind, and and how are you going to make this change? Okay, Many of us in development have been in that meeting, and you're like, oh my God, I'm either getting fired or I'm gonna be embarrassed in the next board meeting, and the CEO is just freaking out about stuff. Okay, in that moment right there, and to me, it's probably just the most illustrative case example, but this is applicable in far less intense conversations, but I figure why not go with the worst?
Go for it.
I think the fundraiser's job is not to just inherit all that energy, which I've done in my life. Believe me, it's affected my digestive system. It's affected my sweat. It's affected my life. Like I've gone home and not been able to sleep. I mean, just think about like we can inherit all that energy versus what I've learned to do and really coach and encourage people to do is to name that. So if the CEO is having that freak out, to say, wow, I'm with you. I see these numbers, right? Like I treat it as a third thing. It's like a big fiery ball. Like it's like the CEO's launching this big fiery ball at me as if I have to take it and I'm at risk of getting all burned up. And instead I want to keep the ball right between us and be like, I see this. I'm with you. I'm worried about these numbers, right? We need to work. And we together need to come up with a plan to get these to a different place. And honestly, it's this is a little trick from, I have a little part of my background was as a therapist early on. And one of the things you learn is to create if you have two people in conflict, it's much more stable to have a third thing, just like a tripod is a stable base that doesn't tip.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say two people are in conflict and they begin talking about, like, let's say the conflict as a third thing in the relationship. Like, how do we solve this kind of conflict? Or when these conditions arise, how can we both play a part in solving that? Or with kids in therapy with children, sometimes it's maybe anger is the third thing or whatever it is, right? And you talk about that emotion and how can we work with anger? How can we play with anger? Where are the right ways to relate to anger? Whatever. Okay. So I find that with that CEO, I want the third thing. If it's two of us in relationship, I want to say, look, I'm with you. I see the numbers. They make me nervous. And then I get, if that's the context, now I can say, what I wouldn't want to do is alienate donors, right? As we solve this problem, I wouldn't want to alienate donors and make it worse. I'd like us to solve it in a way that deepens donor relationships. Now that's very different than imagine the contrast where I'm like, okay, I've got all these numbers. I'll come up with a plan. And then all they want from me is something that will turn numbers around.
Right.
Versus I can get some concepts out there like, wow, I'm with you. I am worried in the middle of the year. I'm optimistic about the second half of the year, but here's what I wouldn't want to do. I wouldn't want to alienate donors. I wouldn't want to compromise our integrity. I'd want to just seize the opportunity for our board to really step up and help us build relationships. I'd want you as executive director to really prioritize fundraising in the second half of the year. And I'm going to do my part to set you up to do that really well. So look at how I take a conversation where I might have fallen back and felt backed into a corner and terrified, right? And even sick to my stomach or whatever else, and scared for my job or my livelihood or whatever else. Instead to just like step up in that and say, hey, this flaming ball between us, like, let's talk about it. Let's talk about this third thing and let's solve it together. So that's one of my key ones. That's a place where I start on this for sure.
It's interesting. We have worked with a couple organizations that had a lot of COVID funding, CARES Act funding that came out of relief efforts, and then after have had a really hard time with where they go from there and how to rebalance because they had scaled up and now how do they rebalance? And one of the things that we have frequently said is this is not a crisis or an emergency for your donors. This is a conversation of authenticity with your donors. And I think that when we launch into that fear place in the anxiety and let the anxiety feed us, it then bleeds into the relationships and some distrust with our donors of, will they continue to be around tomorrow? Do I want to fund and support something if I'm not certain about their stability? So I think that the authenticity of just, instead of leading with the anxiety, but leading with, here's where we were, here's where we are now, here's what we need to continue. It's just a nice reframe and rebalance that will help our donors to feel more certain about what we're doing too.
Absolutely. No, and that gets to integrity, right? Your authenticity, integrity, that's exactly there, right? And then, what I want to, darn, I just lost a thought. I'm with you. Just lost that thought. Sorry.
Well, I want to ask you a little bit about the one-person shop, because I think that we have a lot of organizations that are looking to build a team, replace this team, restructure a development team, but sometimes a budget only allows for one. And so how do we set up a single development professional when we're thinking about all these different skill sets and needs? How do we set up a single development professional for success? And what are some of the things that you would be looking for or recommending when you're hiring for a one-person shop?
Yeah. So I'll first just acknowledge, I think the one-person shop is nearly impossible out of the gate. And I think it's important for people to acknowledge and understand that, and then decide, are they expecting one person to do it all? Or are they expecting the one person to create the conditions to grow? And in doing that, be willing to not do some things in the near term. It really, the one-person shop, I think about when I've been in a one-person shop or a two-person shop, I could spend half my day dealing with data in the database or logistics or just how to do a mail merge and get some stuff out, just the DevOps side of things.
Yep.
And never get to talk to a donor. As soon as I'm two people on a dev team, at least I can start to mitigate those kind of trade-offs a bit.
Yeah.
When you get to 3 and 4 and 5, to me, that's the sweet spot. So a donor team of less than 3 people is really, 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 really hard. So to your question about the one-person shop, that means then I want them to be able to be realistic. And I want the people either above them or around them to support their being realistic. So for example, I remember at a stage in my career when if someone said, okay, Peter, we have to raise $2 million this year. And I'd be like, okay, let's build to that. Let's raise 2. Where later, if I could revisit that years later, I would say, well, I'd like to raise 2 million with you, but let me be honest. Like I would be negligent if I pretended I could just raise that for sure this year. What I can do is tell you the practices I believe we need to do to work on getting to 2 this year. Let's learn from that and then set a goal for next year, right, that really exists in relationship to how we did this year. And so I used to want to just say, someone said jump and I said how high.
Yeah.
With 25 or 30 years in the field now, I want someone says jump and I say, well, let's talk about jumping. Let's discuss.
That's the best way to get there.
Yeah, it's like, is this a pole vault kind of a thing? Is this just like the run and long jump? And are we? And is it about just this year's Olympic Games where we're jumping? Or are we training for 4 years from now? Because that's where we really plan to deliver. Let's talk about where the jump fits. It's that. Sorry, that's kind of a goofy. I just made that up on the spot. I kind of like it now. But
I
anyway,
like it too.
but the let's talk about jumping. Like what's in a jump is probably more where I land now. The pressures on a one-person shop, if you think about it, just DevOps, data, mail merges, getting letters out, just that stuff by itself is a lot.
Yeah.
And you're supporting a board or an executive director. I mean, all these things are already taking up half your time to 2/3, much less, I've got a grant to write. If I were tracking a grant's calendar, I could even do, more, blah, 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 and you kind of get punished for getting more effective. Like the more effective you are, you're going to get punished.
Yes.
And then you're like, well, maybe I can talk to some individual donors. But then if I talk to donors, now I've got thank you notes and calls and relationships. So I really find the one-person shop is super, super hard. So if that's the case, I think the one-person shop ought to be like half your time is really just guiding where things can go, and maybe half your time is doing the kind of the productive work that I was just describing. And you've got to be able to have your eye on how is the board involved, how's the executive director involved, how do we hire one more position, how do we get there, and having some restraint, because you can't. The one-person shop is going to be limited by definition. Even Einstein in one-person shop is going to burn out. So.
Yeah.
I think burnout can be high when we're talking with really small development teams, especially because so much of development is relationship facing and so much of development is the time that it takes to go into relationships, and bad data in is bad data out, which then burns a relationship. Missed grant deadline is, missed money and missed opportunity. And sometimes you can't get back in that funding cycle if you miss it. That it is, I think, a really hard scenario to constantly have that you hold all hats role. Now, some people are very talented and have a lot of those tools at their disposal and are very able. Yeah. But it's still, I think, like you said, Peter, is limiting by nature.
Riffing on that and thinking about roles and sort of the do, where to spend time, and the don't do, where not to spend time, thinking about how much should our development superheroes be spending in training everyone around them around that? I mean, I think that is the other layer we're talking about here, right? If they've been brought in as a one-person shop with all these hats, they're answering to the anxiety of leadership that might be limiting them, and or the anxiety of a board that might be limiting them with a large
Big goals that are unattainable. Yeah.
That may or may not be obtainable, but are not necessarily reasonable in time frame or tools. What would you say to those folks? I mean, short of you're in a sinking ship, get out. How can they? Are there things they can do in the interim to test those assumptions and get some forward momentum in that space, or is it really just sort of putting their finger up to the wind and having a very clear sense that it's not going the direction they need it to? I think that's the hard part where folks are a lot.
Yeah. Can you tell you what? I heard everything you just said, but then I got lost in enjoying some of it as you were describing.
So I guess
and now I want to make sure I answer your actual question. So
my actual question is for development superheroes out there who have it all coming at them. Perhaps they're a one-person shop, and they're trying to figure out: do I expend my talents here now?
Yeah.
Trying to carry this flaming ball as far as I can.
Yes, right.
Or is this way bigger than me and my ability? What's my ability to impact what's happening?
Got it. Okay, great. Yeah. Well, so I mentioned a moment ago a little bit of a background in some clinical kind of family therapy stuff. And I had a supervisor back when I was an MSW student who she used to say, make the implicit explicit, make the implicit explicit. And I think what you're describing here is a time like what she was referring to. And to me, this is some of the benefit of kind of data and prioritization and just writing something down. Like it's one thing if I'm just talking to the other executive director or to my, like, let's say I'm the DD, I'm the development director, I'm talking to the executive director and it's kind of a scary situation. If I write down, okay, what are the 10, like, what do I believe are the 10 most important things in fundraising or the 5 most important things right now and put them in order how I believe they're in order. And then I take that list, the executive director, and I say, look, here's these 10 things. I can honestly do a good job of 3 of them. Help me pick the 3 I can do.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm making the implicit explicit.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm rather than my saying to the executive director, God, I can't get this all done, or geez, I'll do my best. And they're like, why can't Peter do that? Why can't he? So for me to go back and say, look, and when I say 10 things, I mean grant writing, events, relationships,
big
right?
bucket things.
board giving, executive director portfolio. Okay, I'm talking about big topics, right?
Yeah.
And I say, at best, one of them is development operations and data. Okay, and I say, look, at best, I can do 3 of these. And if I hired someone else, we could maybe get to 6 of these. But there's 10 of these, and they all matter. So I could either spin around trying to do all 10, being pretty ineffective, or you could help me prioritize. What are the 3 you most need me to do? Now the executive director, they learn something. Second, they say, well, I'd like you to really focus on those grants. Okay. Well, if that's what they say, then you now have permission to prioritize. Okay, grants are actually where, otherwise you're trying to do grant writing while planning an event, while doing the board. Yeah. Okay. So make the implicit explicit. It's a little from the art of like managing up. Like how do you, just the act of writing it down and making a list and handing it to somebody else and asking for guidance. Yeah. That's a great way to do that.
I've worked with a lot of executive directors in the past that component has fallen upon them. And yet they are not necessarily the development expert. They don't necessarily have a vision of how many people on your team are working on what elements and what are our key priorities. That I think that single task of making the implicit explicit is the role of the development leadership, the development director, is to be able to say, here are all the buckets. Where are we going to prioritize? Where do we have strength and skill set? Where will we have the biggest impact? So that it's not necessarily coaching and teaching executive directors and boards. It is simply making it really clear how things are being prioritized and allowing them to be a part of that decision-making practice.
And if I can pick up on that, I would say this gets back to what I actually think is truly essential for a development director, especially as the team gets a little larger, but also in the one-person shop. To me, the person who can help size up, I mean, we talk about diversified revenue streams all the time, right? There aren't that many options. Let's just say we have individual donors, we have foundations and grants, we have corporate, we might have government, and we might have earned income. Like I just named about 5 things that might be revenue streams just in general. A development director who doesn't understand how those 5 things are different or can't say like, oh, earned income is really unlikely, right? Or earned income is very likely because of our business model, right? Or government funding. Okay, is that really likely, or is it kind of unlikely and like we're going to be kind of opportunistic that, and then you go into foundations and grants. Like let's just take a group like Make-A-Wish. I worked at one time for Make-A-Wish. They're not going to get government funding. There's no government program that's going to grant money at the state level for wishes. Like that's not something government's going to do, right? And guess what? Earned income. You're not going to make money off of wishes.
Right.
So to be clear, there are some companies who it might build their brand and make them look good if they're a part of kids getting wishes, right?
Yes.
And they're individual donors who might have a heart tug with either in their own family, a child who is critically ill, or a wish they could get, right? Okay, now Make-A-Wish is very different from if I described, a racial equity advocacy organization. Let's just go Black Lives Matter. Let's say you're Black Lives Matter, you got to raise money. Well, you're going to be like, okay, corporate or, business income. Sure, there are businesses who will support BLM for sure, but there's others who are terrified.
Right.
So the corporate environment, it exists, but it's very it's going to be dicey and nuanced, and we're going to need our best people on that one to make that one work really well, right?
Yep.
Individual donors. Okay, let's size up who are the individual donors giving to Black Lives Matter and where they're coming from, right? Is there going to be government money? No. Is there earned income? I'm guessing not, but I don't know. But okay, the development director has to be able to look at the diversified revenue, mix and say, if I were to rank what's most likely, what's my next most likely, if I'm lucky, there's 3, right? What are the 4 and 5? Because I've watched people hire someone for development because they'd be great in government relations or lobbying or something. And I'm thinking that maybe is 5% of the job, So that's, I think, and I haven't really created a tool for this. I probably should, but in the classroom, I've often written up each of these areas, right? Individuals, corporate, foundation, government, earned income. And I ask people to rank on 3 things. One of them is likelihood.
Okay.
I call it probability. How likely is that to be a source of money?
Yep.
The next one is how costly, how expensive is it to raise money with that group, right?
Yeah.
How likely, how costly, and my third one is how risky. So for example, you might have a celebrity in your mix who's very likely to help you raise money, but is it risky because, right, they have bad personal behavior, their personal brand goes down, and your organization, think about, you can think about charities that have been blown up by the fact that they thought they had everything riding on a celebrity, and the celebrity has a scandal, and now the nonprofit's affected. So those 3 things, how expensive is it to raise money this way? How likely is it we would receive money this way? And how risky is it to take that money or to have that line of fundraising? I take each of those 5 things. I ask him to rank high, medium, low on risk, likelihood, and cost. That helps point you toward, maybe our most important area is this, and our second most important area is this. I think the development leader who understands that and who can build a team based on those priorities is fantastic.
That's a great frame.
Well, I think the combination of being able to build community, be authentic and have integrity, be able to have a vision toward these elements of what's the risk, what's the value, how costly is it?
Yep.
These are, to me, assets around how a team and an organization functions and thrives versus always being up against the dollar amount, right? The 2.6 million we need to raise.
Yep.
And I think that that's a critical element, is that when we're only focusing on the dollar amount that needs to be raised, oftentimes the rest of it gets left on the cutting room floor. And without those pieces, we're not raising the 2.6 million.
Well, there's no path.
Right.
We're not working together to make what the path is. We're just saying, get there.
Yeah. Just do it. Just
do it. And there could be a collective wisdom to figuring out a path.
Well, Peter, thank you for helping us vision a path today. Let's take a short break. And when we come back, I want to jump on the fundraising elevator and get a little bit of your insights about events. So we will be right back.
Okay, thanks.
The Fundraising Elevator is recorded at the AV department in Portland, Oregon. For years, they've been our trusted partner, delivering exceptional audio-visual production and videography for nonprofits. In 2020, they transformed into a dynamic live streaming studio, producing more than 900 virtual and hybrid events. Now, we embark on an exciting journey together to bring you this podcast. Seeking the best in live events, video production, and live streaming? We proudly recommend our friends at the AV department. Link in the episode description.
All right, welcome back to the Fundraising Elevator. Peter, I want to ask, we've talked a lot about what we're looking for in hiring, building a team, what a development team needs to thrive and be successful. What about those circumstances when we have someone on the team that is not the right fit? What if we've hired someone that is just like you used in your last example, maybe they're really good at government relations, but government relations is only about 2% of our revenue. What do we do then?
Yeah, I go back to honesty on this and with a bit of grace and dignity. I've definitely had the opportunity in my career a number of times. It's also happened to me. So, I mean, I've been on both sides of this, but, where I've said to someone like, look, I really care about your career and I care about your growth. I think given the needs of this organization at this time, you're going to have better opportunities in another arena. And I don't want something awkward to happen, or I don't want you to feel like we're kind of pulling the rug out from under you. But if you were interested in growing your career in the way where I think you're strongest, I'll help support you in that. I'd be a great reference. We can think different. I've got to think differently about staffing strategy, and I don't need to do that in a way that's hurtful, but I do want to grow your career. I want to grow this organization. And there are ways to approach, and that's just one version of it, right?
Yeah.
But there are ways to just be honest. I've often said I'd rather manage people relative to their careers, not their jobs. So if I know where they really want to go in life professionally versus what's a job I needed them to do, then I can help create, hopefully, a really happy job for them that's in alignment with growing as they want to grow. And sometimes it's in a different place in the, different organization. I also think that we know in the nonprofit sector, it's kind of like one big company in a sense. Like people do move from across organizations.
Yes.
And there are healthy reasons for that. Just like in a company, someone might move from one division to another or move up or this or that. Nonprofits generally are so small, the only way you can advance your career is by moving somewhere else. So I try to normalize that a bit just in casual, kind of the water cooler conversation or in staff meetings about like, hey, I admire this other organization or what they're doing or this or that. And just kind of talking about the field as a whole as a place to thrive. I don't know. I'd love to give people kind of ways out with dignity and kind of gracious exits and stuff like that. And I think if you get good at that, it takes a lot of that fear away and the anxiety away from doing stuff the wrong way. That's a quick thought.
Well, I also think too, what I like about that is it's less deficiency forward.
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to, yes, that's jargon, but I feel like we have to own that. Sometimes our lack of clarity, our lack of structures, our not completely understanding the job role that we're hiring for and the changes that need to have, those have implications for folks in our stead. And I think that is an honest piece of the conversation too. Sometimes we learn through the process of bringing people in and having their perspective look around and go, what the heck is all of this and what's happening? That those... like, what is the opportunity in that for them and for us to figure out something that might be a better fit?
Yeah. Let's jump into the fundraising elevator.
Let's jump in the fundraising elevator. Let's go up to the penthouse where the party is, Peter. What is an event or a gathering you've been to that was memorable and what made it so?
Well, there are a lot of them. And I'm not just being nice. I think the two of you are just at the absolute top of the field on this. So, and I wish I were in the same town as you on a regular basis so I could see more of your mastery at work. But I so admire what you do. I will tell you locally in Seattle, I'm a longtime fan of Treehouse, which is an organization that grew up around foster care and young people in foster care. And basically it was created by social workers decades ago, maybe 30 years ago or something, who were like, hey, it's one thing to place kids in foster care or give them resources for therapy. It's another for them to be able to have a dress to go to a dance or cleats to play a sport or a bicycle. Okay. So Treehouse basically grew up around kind of what are some things around the edges for young people in foster care. Very different organization. It's still that focus, but they have become a huge game changer in how in getting to in the state of Washington, where young people who are in foster care graduate from high school at the rate of their peers who are not in foster care.
Fantastic.
And they've taken that on strategically, decisively. They made that shift about a decade ago. And they're now quite a resource nationally in terms of impacting kind of how services are relative to foster care with that kind of a very precise strategic focus. So I give that backstory to say that I was at the luncheon probably 10 years ago when they laid down, they said in maybe the luncheon it was probably 2012 or 2014, something like that. And they said, we are going to draw a line in the sand that we're going to get to the stage where in the state of Washington, young people who are in care, graduate from high school at the same rate as their peers in the state of Washington by 2017. It was like 5 years hence or something. Every event following annually at that luncheon, they updated us on their progress toward that goal. And there were different ways in which the event, just experiences, like even the way the table was set or the speakers, what they were speaking to, or the storytelling, it all kept aligning to that theme. And over 5 years, I kept participating in this trajectory. It was amazing.
That's amazing.
Well, and now in about the third year, there were some policy wins along that line to get extra like educational supports and blah, 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 whatever it was at the time. I think one of the biggies was that young people wind up, when foster care, like when they turn 18, they're just kind of booted out, and they wanted to get young people that foster care benefits could extend till I think 23 or 4 or something, and you get in a community college and get support. And there were just things like that. I don't remember the particular policy issues anymore, but something like that. Well, so they brought the governor of the state of Washington to the luncheon. They timed it at a time that when the bill that the legislature had fought for that year was being signed, the governor actually signed it at a table up on the dais at this event. For those of us who've been going for 3 or 4 years, okay, so now I keep getting every luncheon isn't just a luncheon that feels the same year over year with a clever program, but I was moving toward this goal. Then the next year is the year they announced that students who'd grown up in foster care were graduating from high school at the same rate of their peers not in care. So I was updated on the impact of the mission, and it just beautifully done. So that's what I would say is it wasn't just a gala or a luncheon for the sake of having one, but I really felt like I was at the table changing something in the world.
That's the perfect
We talked so
spot.
often about the continuity through an event and the arc through the event, and it's all part of the same story. I love that their arc was like a 5-year, 10-year trajectory.
Let's take you on a journey. That's so
amazing.
good. Well, let's jump back in the elevator and head down to the boiler room where tools are. We've talked a lot of them today, but what would you highlight as the tool today for you that you would advocate that fundraisers have in their toolbox?
Well, I want people to measure the right things and not the wrong things. And this goes back to that whole anxiety conversation earlier. And there's a tool that I developed some years ago, and I think maybe I just got not bored of the tool, but I used to give a lot of talks about it back around 2010, 11, 12, something like that. So I've been doing other things, but that tool is as true today as it was then. I call it the Beyond Cash Fundraising Management Dashboard. The idea was it was a dashboard for fundraising that was not about cash, because I felt like every executive director, every board was focused on how much money do we raise this year.
Yep.
And sometimes the amount of money we raise this year imperils our ability to raise it next year. And so I thought, what could you measure in a fundraising shop? What could you report to the board that's the right stuff? So for example, the most important indicator on that dashboard is your rate of retention of donors. Like at what rate do people who give this year come back next year? And making that a measure that the board is familiar with, right? What is the number of new donors who joined the organization this year, right? Do we every year get 100 new donors, and suddenly we had 0? Or do we have 100 typically and we had a year where we got 300 new donors? Like what changed? And so if we measure the retention rate, the number of new donors, I also have an indicator in there that I call the future commitment indicator. So like, let's say you ask for a gift over 3 years. Well, you've pre-raised money for next year and the year after. So how much does the board have their eye on? Oh, not just the 2024 fundraising numbers, but we've already pre-raised for 2025 and 6. Okay, if you measure the right things to get the board's anxiety to be productive, I want the board to be anxious about losing donors.
Yes.
I want the board to be anxious about not bringing in new donors. I want the board to be anxious about not raising money for the future. If they're going to be anxious, which I don't think I can change, I think that's going to be true. I want their anxiety to be productive, right? I want their anxiety to move us forward. And worrying about donor retention is a great thing to worry about, right? So I called that the Beyond Cash Fundraising Management Dashboard. When I created it at the time, it was free. It is still free. It's always been free. I'll never sell it to anybody because I just felt like in our field, it's something that fundraisers need to have. So before this podcast today, I went back to my old files, like, where is my old PDF of the? So I emailed it to you right before this podcast.
Great.
So I know that you'll have it. And you're welcome to share it for free. And I think it's a great tool to have. And there's some instructions in there about how to use it. But they're just some kind of core things to get boards and executive directors focused on the right stuff rather than the wrong stuff to measure.
Incredible.
Awesome.
Well,
Thank you.
will include that in the show notes. Peter, I've often said that you are a leadership magician. You are a board whisperer. You are a development extraordinaire. I think you have taught us the phrase that we're not just telling stories, but we're story listening. And we love that so much. I appreciate the impact you have in this sector. If people want to find a chief strategist officer on a fractional basis, how do they get a hold of you?
Oh, you're the best. So it's Strategy Partner is what I call my firm, and my website is strategypartner.llc. They can find me there or on LinkedIn.
Great. We'll put all of your contact info in the show notes so folks can reach out.
Peter, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. I appreciate you both so much.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced in partnership with Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV Department. The program is produced by April Clark and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson and Heidi Christensen. Video production by Chris Peterson, Whitney Gomes, and Nathan Bouquet. Video editing by Steve Osborne. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group, and support from Sophia Keller, John Lyles, and Andy Dowsett. Loving the Fundraising Elevator, but wondering how you can talk to Sam and Kristen? Well, now's your chance to do it. Book one-on-one consulting time with Swaim Strategies experts Sam, Kristen, and Mary, and get all your event questions answered. Our team has you covered on strategic planning, fundraising strategy, storytelling, data tools, and registration support. Get the tools and the help you need to make the most impact at your fundraising event. Book at elevatenonprofit.com. The link is also in our show notes.